Hello students, welcome to a lesson through the virtual training center of the Brihan Mumbai Mahanagar Palika. My name is Shraddha teacher, and in this lockdown period, since we are not able to go to school, children, we will be doing many lessons here online through the virtual class. So come on, let's proceed to our lesson for today.
Our lesson for today is a lesson in Standard 9th. Subject is English, and children, we will be doing a lesson in grammar, that is clauses. Now we will try and cover as many points of grammar is there in part of your lessons in the textbook. Okay, so if you look at lesson number 2.4, that is the fall of Troy, you will see that there are many grammar and vocabulary parts which we are doing continuously. We are trying to tackle each of the points separately. Today we will talk about clauses. Now, when we talk about clauses is a very vast topic. Okay, children, you have to know what are the two main types of clauses and then what are the types of subordinate clauses. So, we will take this lesson slowly. We will try and understand it in totality. We will start from the basics and we will see a lot of examples so that if you are faced with any question on clauses, you will be able to answer. Okay, so like I told you, clauses are a very important part of English grammar because clauses are called as the building blocks of sentences. Now you know that when we build a house, okay, you start by putting up the bricks, isn't it? So after you arrange the bricks, then you form a wall. After a particular one wall is formed and then you join four walls together, you get a room. When you join many rooms together, you get a home or a house. And when many houses join together, you get a block or an apartment or a building. So in the same way, these clauses, they are like the bricks in a wall. So without these clauses or the bricks, you cannot have the wall. That is, you cannot have the sentence. And without sentences, you cannot have paragraphs, isn't it? Without paragraphs, you cannot have an article or a story. And without a story or an article, you cannot have a newspaper or a magazine or for that matter, a novel. So that is why the clauses, which are the basic bricks in a sentence, are called as building blocks of sentences. So we should have a clear understanding about what are clauses and how can you differentiate clauses from another concept called as phrases, which are very close to what clauses are, but they are different. Okay, so all those things we will talk about today. We will talk a little bit about sentences and many other things which come up. So any point comes up, we will talk about that point and then we will proceed. Okay, so this is going to be an interesting lesson. So come on, pay attention, and also you can take down certain points if you want to. So this video is totally for your use as you like to use it. So you can pause it and you can take down a few sentences. You can stop the video if you feel that no, this is not what I want to learn now, and go back later. All right, so you have full freedom to study at your own pace using this video. If you have not understood a concept, you can again go back and you can see the video once again. All right, children. So let us start. And like I told you, this is a part of the grammar in the lesson, The Fall of Troy, part 1, which is lesson number 2.4 in your English textbook. And if you see, this is the question which appears in your textbook on page number 43, where they've asked you to underline the clauses in the above sentences. So unless and until you know what a clause is, unless and until you know what are the different types of clauses, it is very difficult for you to underline it. All right. So come on, let's move on and let us see what are clauses and how you will differentiate between the various clauses, etc. So let's start by understanding what a clause is. So a clause, children, in language is a part of a sentence that contains a verb. So this is one basic idea. Okay, so it is that part of the sentence which contains a verb. That means a sentence can have different parts. But a particular part of the sentence where there is a verb is called as a clause. Now before we move on, I told you whenever a point comes up, whether you know it or whether you don't, we will revise it and then we will go ahead. So in this we have two points to talk about. That is, we said in language, a clause is a part of the sentence that contains a verb. So let us try and understand what a sentence and what a verb is. I'm sure you already know this. You are in standard 9th now. So we all know what the meaning of a sentence is. We all know what the meaning of a verb is. Nevertheless, let's look at what a sentence is. So a sentence is a combination of words arranged in such a manner that it expresses a complete sense or meaning. Okay, so sentence means nothing but words. Now these words are arranged in such a way, in such a manner that there is a complete meaning to this set of words. Now why I say arranged in an order, because see, suppose I want to say the word I like to read. Now this is a set of words, it is arranged in a particular manner. If I say read like to I, then these are the same words, but they are arranged in a haphazard manner, not a proper manner. Okay, so that is why there is no meaning. So it is very essential that you have words which are meaningful and they are also arranged in a proper manner. Okay, so this is what a sentence is. Let us look at certain examples of sentences now here. So I come is a sentence. All right, you must be wondering that this is just two words, but yes, it is a sentence. See why it is a sentence? Because it has got words in it and it is arranged in such a manner that there is a complete meaning to the sentence. It is nowhere said that a sentence cannot contain two words. The next sentence, the boy cried. Again, a small sentence but a meaningful one. Canada is a rich country. The girl ran into her bedroom. Some students like to study in the morning. So there are two things that you need to note over here. One is there is no limitations on the number of words in a sentence. A sentence can contain one word very seldom, but two words, more than two words. There are really long sentences also, which we will learn when we talk about sentences in a particular lesson. Okay, so these are all examples of sentence or sentences. We talked about one more concept now when we talked about meaning of clauses, and that was what is a verb. So a verb is a word which describes the action in a sentence. So we know this also, we know about verbs, we have been studying about verbs, we know that verbs also have various tenses, etc. But even then, since we are picking up this topic and since there is a mention of verbs in this, we will do the meaning of verbs also. So a verb is a word which describes the action in a sentence. So it is a doing word. Okay, the word which does something in a sentence. The verb which suggests action in a sentence is the verb. Let us look at various examples now here of verbs in a sentence. So I play football. So play here is an example of a verb. They skip quickly. Skip. So skipping here is an example of a verb. We eat spaghetti. So eating here is an example of a verb. There is some action being done, isn't it? Now when we had talked about verbs, children, we also know that verbs are also of different kinds. We have transitive verbs, we have intransitive verbs, and so many different kinds of verbs are there. Okay, but we are not going to look at that now. We will look at it when a lesson in types of verbs come up. And look at the next one. Bob is 7 today. So Bob is, it is stating about his, you can say about Bob. It is giving you an information about Bob. Okay, so play, skip, eat, is, all these are examples of verbs in a sentence. All right, children. So we started off understanding what are clauses. And when we talked about clauses, we said that clauses are that part of a sentence which contain a verb. So that is why we looked at what sentences are, and now we looked at what verbs are. Now let us move on to clauses. So a clause is a group of related words containing a subject and a verb. Okay. Now, it is different from a phrase like I told you in the beginning of the lesson. It is different from a phrase which does not include a subject and a verb. So see, when you learn English, especially when you learn English grammar, there are certain concepts which are closely related and they may be a cause of confusion also. But once you understand what the meaning is, and once you revise it, now see, if you learn about phrases today and then you do not pick up the book at all for 2 years, and then after 2 years when you pick up the book, naturally there will be confusion in your mind, isn't it? So now remember, a clause is a group of related words and they contain a subject and they contain a verb. Okay, and it is also different from a phrase. Now, why is it different from a phrase? Because a phrase does not contain a subject and it does not contain a verb. That is why it is different from a phrase. Okay. Now, of course, we will not move ahead without looking at the meaning of phrases, because I want this lesson to be a complete lesson for you, so that you do not have to go to some other source and refer to what a phrase is, or you do not need to go to another source to check out what the meaning of a sentence or verb is. So when you see this video, you should be able to get complete information about clauses. So let's talk about a clause. So there is a subject and there is a verb. Whereas in a phrase, there is no subject and no verb. So let's talk about what a phrase is. So a phrase is a group of words that go together. They are words which are written together more often than not, but they do not make complete sense. Okay, phrases, they do not make complete sense. Why they do not make complete sense? The reason is here, because there is no subject, there is no verb, and that is why they do not make complete sense. Sometimes you can also say that there is no agreement between the subject and the verb. That also you can say. Okay, so see, a phrase is a group of words that go together but do not make complete sense. They act as a part of a sentence part. Okay, phrases act as parts of a sentence. So let us look at some examples of phrases here, and then you will understand why phrases do not have complete meaning and why they are different from clauses. And of course, we will look at many examples of clauses and phrases together also. So the difference comes out immediately and you're able to soak in what the difference is. So look at the first example of a phrase. So with soft brown fur. Now what are you talking about? With soft brown fur. Can you make any sense in this group of words, which is a phrase? No, because you don't know whether you're talking about a rabbit or a hare with soft brown fur or a dog with soft brown fur. So you cannot get any meaning from this particular sentence. Okay, so that is why this is not a clause, this is a phrase. Let us take one more example. Under the dining table. So under the dining table, what? Is there someone hidden under the dining table? Is there a cat under the dining table? Or has the glass fallen under the dining table? So you don't know what it means. Under the dining table. So this is an example of a phrase, because nowhere from this group of words you can make complete sense. You're not able to understand what they want to say, what the sentence could mean. Okay, so two examples we saw: with soft brown fur and under the dining table. And when we talked about with soft brown fur, we thought whether we are discussing about a hare with soft brown fur or a dog with soft brown fur. So there is no clarity. That is why these are phrases. Let us look at one more example. After the high school football game. So what? What after the high school football game? Are the children planning to go and watch a movie? Okay, do they plan to go and watch a movie, or are they planning to go and eat some ice cream? So after the high school football game, what? We do not have any clarity in meaning. That is why all these are examples of phrases. Okay? Now let's move on and let us talk about what a clause is. So now you know what a phrase is. So now you will understand what a clause is very easily. So a clause is a group of related words which contain a subject and a verb. So that means definitely you will get some meaning from this group of words. It will not be like under the table. Okay. So let's see. A clause may act as a noun or an adjective or an adverb in a sentence. So a clause could be, or it could take the place, or it could play the role of a noun or an adjective or an adverb in a sentence. So we all know what are nouns and adjectives and adverbs, children. But even then, let's take a quick look. So a noun is the name of a person, place or thing. Okay, they are also called as naming words. Adjectives describe the words or describe the nouns, and adverbs are added to the verb to modify its meaning. So the adverb usually tells us when or where or how or in what manner or to what extent the action is performed. So when there is any word which tells us more about the action, then that is an adverb. So a clause may be a noun clause, or it could be an adjective clause, or it could be an adverb clause. So if the clause acts like a noun, then it is a noun clause. If the clause acts like an adjective, then it is an adjective clause. And if the clause acts like an adverb, then it is an adverb clause. And when we talk about adverb, now we know that there is when, where, how in the adverb, isn't it? So when it is when, then it is adverb clause of time. When it is where, then it is adverb clause of place. When it is how, then it is adverb clause of manner, and so on. So you see now how the picture becomes clear, because when we talk about clause, you hear so many things. You must have heard so many words related to clause. Noun clause is there, then adjective clause is there, then adverb clause of time is there, and there is a big confusion in your head. But I hope the confusion is cleared now, because the clause may act as a noun, it may act as an adjective, or it may act as an adverb in a sentence. And depending on how it acts, it may be called by that particular name. Okay, so this was about some more information about clauses. Let us move on and let us see what the difference is between a clause and a phrase. Now children, even in science you will see such questions. Differentiate between. So when you differentiate between two things, they become clear to you. Because of the differences, you come to know, yes, this is this and this is this. So the idea becomes more clear. That is why we say differences, finding out the differences makes the idea or makes the concept clearer. Okay, so that is why we are finding out the differences between clauses and phrases here. So what is a clause? The clause must contain both a subject and a predicate or a verb. Okay. For example, they studied for the test. So they is the subject, studied for the test is the predicate, and studied here is the verb. What about phrases? The phrases, they do not require a subject or a predicate. So they do not have meaning also that way. So the phrases do not require a subject or a predicate. Let's look at an example of a phrase, eating an apple. So it is like brown fur. It is like under the table. Okay, eating an apple. So what? Eating an apple is good for health, or he was eating an apple, so we do not know what. Okay, so this is an example of a phrase. So I hope now the idea of clauses and phrases are clear to you. Let us look at a few more examples. See, when she forgot her car keys. So see, she forgot her car keys. complete meaning. There is a subject, which is she, and there is a predicate. Predicate means there is a verb plus the object. Forgot her car keys. Things took a turn for the worse. Things is the subject and took a turn for the worse is the predicate. Where took is the verb and turn for the worse is the object. Okay? Look at the phrases now. They do not require a subject or predicate, I told you. So without her parents' blessings. So there is no subject here and there is exactly no, you can say verb also here, isn't it? Here blessing is a noun. You're not blessing someone. Here blessing is parents' blessing. That is, it is a noun. So there is no predicate here. There is no subject here. So it is a phrase. After the earthquake, same example, same conditions. There is no subject and there is no verb. So this stands for a phrase or this qualifies as a phrase. So this was about the difference between clauses and phrases. Now in this part of the lesson, children, we will try and see what are the types of clauses, out of which we will try and see what are main or independent clauses. The remaining part, that is subordinate clauses or dependent clauses, along with the types, we will see in the next video. Okay, because we are doing things in great detail and that is why it requires time. So let us now go to the part of the lesson where we will talk about the main clause. Or what is the meaning of the main clause? So when you say main means just like that in ordinary language. What does main mean? Main means something which is important, isn't it? Something on which everyone else depends. So who's the main person in your house? It's your mother. Okay? Because everyone else depends on your mother. You could say it's your father also. But the main person, the main people are the people on which everyone else depends. So the main clause is also the clause which is sometimes called as an independent clause. So the main clause does not need others. For example, your mother and your father, they can survive on their own. They do not need you, right? But you as children, you definitely need your mother and father. Without them, you will not be able to survive, or your survival will become very, very difficult. All right? So the main clause, when you say main clause, think about your mother or your father at home. So the main clause is also called as an independent clause. It is independent. It does not need the support or it does not depend on anyone else. So in the main clause, there is a subject and there is a verb. Okay? So now the subject is the person or the subject is that which does the action or the person who is involved in the action. Whereas the verb is the action. This we know. Okay? So the doer of the action is also sometimes called as the subject. So what is the main clause once again? The main clause is the independent clause. When we look at the examples, you will understand this better. So see, main clause has its own individual meaning. Therefore, it can stand on its own. And since it can stand on its own and express complete meaning, it is also called as the independent clause. So these are two extremely important things for you to understand. So main clause has its own individual meaning and it can stand on its own because it is not dependent on anyone else. And because it can stand on its own, it is called as independent clause. Let us look at a few examples. So Laurie walked the dog. So Laurie here is the subject and walked is the verb. Okay, and if you take the dog also along with walked, then it becomes the predicate. All right, but now it is important for us to understand that a clause, an independent clause, contains a subject and a verb. Predicate also, sometimes you write sentences without the object. Sometimes you can just say Laurie walked. Okay, so even that is a clause. That is why I'm not focusing on the predicate issue. I'm just focusing on the subject and the verb. Look at one more sentence. Now these are two sentences together, so they are compound sentences. Okay, here you will find two independent clauses. In a compound sentence, sometimes you will find two independent clauses. So Laurie, here is the subject, took is the verb, her dog to the store, and she is again the subject, bought is the verb, him treats. So see here, in one particular sentence, you have two independent clauses. Alright, so this also could happen. So what is an independent clause? An independent clause is a group of words which have a subject and a verb or a predicate, as you can say, and they express complete meaning. Okay, so in short, if someone tells you to explain what a main clause is, now a main clause is also called as an independent clause. Okay, so if someone tells you to explain what a main clause is, what will you say? Every main clause will follow this pattern. What is the pattern? There will be a subject and there will be a verb. Don't get confused with the predicate, because just explained why we do not say predicate all the time, why we say verb all the time. Okay, so subject plus a verb. Secondly, it should have a complete thought. So when there is a subject and a verb, definitely that sentence will express a complete thought. So every main clause will follow this pattern. Subject plus verb is equal to complete thought pattern. Next, a main clause is a group of words that can stand alone as a sentence. So when you talked about sentence, children, we saw what sentences are, and I showed you examples where sentences can have 2 words and sentences can have 10 words also. So a 2-word sentence, a 3-word sentence, these are all main clause in a sentence. And we also, in the previous slide, we saw a compound sentence where there are 2 main clauses in a sentence. So a main clause can also be called as a sentence, because the meaning of a main clause is similar to the meaning of a sentence. Every sentence must have at least one main clause, naturally, because in a sentence, if there is a subject and a verb, only then the sentence will have meaning, isn't it? And if there is no subject, no verb in a sentence, it does not become a sentence at all. So every sentence must have at least one main clause. Otherwise, you will have a sentence fragment. Fragment means a sentence in pieces which does not have any meaning. Okay, children. So this was about main clauses. Now, subordinate clause is something we will talk about when we meet next time. Because when we talk about subordinate clauses, we saw the introduction today. We will have to learn about what are subordinate clauses, and there are so many types of subordinate clauses as well. So let us reserve that for the next video. So in today's video, children, we talked about clauses in particular. We also saw the meaning of what a sentence is. We saw the meaning of what a verb is. Okay, we saw the meaning of phrases also, because phrases and clauses are sometimes mistaken. People mistake phrases for clauses and vice versa. So we saw what the meaning of phrases are also, and we saw many examples of phrases, and so that the idea of clauses becomes clear to you. And then we talked about what a main clause is. Okay, we tried to understand the meaning of a main clause with various examples. And so let me end this lesson on the note that when we meet next time, we will be talking about the subordinate clauses, or we also call it as the dependent clauses.
So children, wasn't that a wonderful video? And did you enjoy watching it? So if you want to watch more such videos in future, then please like this video and also subscribe to our channel, the MCGM Portal for Education, and also hit the bell button so that you get notified whenever I upload a new video here. Thank you so much for now. Let's meet again soon.